Before you give your orchid one last heavy watering, zip the suitcase and walk out the door. Stop for a moment. The biggest danger to your orchid while you are away may not be too little water. It may be the extra water you add right before you leave, especially when the center of the pot is already damp and the decorative container is still holding runoff below the roots. A vacation changes your schedule, but it does not automatically change what your orchid needs. A healthy Phalaenopsis does not suddenly require a flood because you will be gone for several days. It still needs the same basic things it needed yesterday: air around the roots, moisture at the right time, bright, indirect light, stable temperatures, and a pot that can drain. By the end of this video, you will have a simple plan for a weekend away, a trip of about 1 week, and a vacation that lasts close to 2 weeks. But before we build those 3 plans, put the watering can down. There is one hidden area inside the pot that can completely change your decision. Imagine 5 orchids lined up on the same table. From across the room, they look almost identical. They all have broad green leaves. They all sit in clear plastic pots. They all receive light from the same window. Yet one is planted in chunky bark. One is packed in sphagnum moss. One is a mini orchid in a very small pot. One has a large mass of healthy roots. And one sits inside a deep decorative cassia pot where extra water can collect. Those 5 orchids may not dry at the same speed. Bark usually allows more air around the roots and may dry faster than tightly packed moss. A mini pot may lose moisture faster than a larger pot. A large plant with many active roots may use water differently from a stressed plant with damaged roots. A bright window, a warm room, moving air, and dry indoor conditions may speed drying. Lower light, dense moss, limited airflow, and a cooler room may slow it down. That is why the most useful rule for vacation care is also the simplest. Do not water because you are leaving. Water because the orchid is ready. Try to make these decisions at least a day or 2 before departure instead of waiting until the final hour. That gives you time to observe what happens after watering, check whether water appears in the cassia pot later, and confirm that the new position stays safe when afternoon sun reaches the window. It also gives a recently watered crown time to dry while you are still home. Walk through the room as if you were already away. Are the blinds scheduled to close? Will a family member change the thermostat? Will a door that is normally open be closed, reducing airflow? Will the orchid receive stronger sun because another plant has been moved? Vacation care is not only about the plant. It is about the temporary version of the room the plant will experience after you leave. If the orchid carries buds or fresh flowers, stability becomes even more important. Buds may react to abrupt changes in temperature, drafts, light, or moisture. You cannot guarantee that every bud will remain, but you can avoid creating unnecessary shocks during the final hours before departure. Tip number 1 is to inspect before you water. Start with the roots. You can see through the clear pot. Healthy Phalaenopsis roots often look green when they are moist, and more silver or grey as the surface dries. That color change is helpful, but it is not a complete watering instruction. The roots touching the wall of the pot can look silver, while the center of the pot is still holding moisture. Look at more than color. Healthy roots are usually firm. A brown root is not automatically rotten just because it is brown. What matters is its structure. A living root may be stained by old bark or fertilizer residue and still feel firm. A badly rotted root is more likely to feel soft, hollow, mushy, or to lose its outer layer when handled. If the leaves look limp while the medium is still very wet, do not assume the plant needs another drink. Damaged roots can leave the leaves dehydrated even when the pot contains too much water. Next, lift the pot. This is one of the easiest skills you can learn before a trip. A freshly watered pot usually feels noticeably heavier than the same pot after much of the moisture has left. You do not need a scale. You only need to compare the weight over time. Lift the orchid after a normal watering, then lift it again as it approaches the point when you would usually water. That difference becomes a useful reference. But weight also needs context. A ceramic cover pot can make everything feel heavy. A thick moss plug can hold water in the center, while the top feels dry. A large root system can fill most of the pot, leaving less medium to hold moisture. Use weight as one piece of evidence, not the only piece. Now check the medium below the surface. If the orchid grows in bark, look through the clear pot at the pieces deeper inside. The top layer often dries first. Bark lower in the pot may still appear darker. If you normally use a clean wooden skewer to monitor moisture, insert it gently into the center and leave it long enough to pick up moisture. When you remove it, coolness or visible dampness tells you the center has not dried as much as the surface suggests. Do not jab blindly through a dense root system. The goal is to check, not to damage the plant. If the orchid grows in sphagnum moss, be even more careful about judging only the surface. The top can become pale and crisp while the middle remains moist. Grocery store orchids are often sold with moss packed tightly around the roots, sometimes with an inner plug that stays wet longer than expected. Gently touch an accessible area near the center, or use the pot weight and root condition together. If the pot is still heavy and the middle is cool and damp, adding more water before vacation may do more harm than good. Now remove the clear pot from the decorative container. This is where many people discover the most dangerous water in the setup, the water they cannot see. A pot may have good drainage holes and still sit above a puddle trapped inside the cachepot. If the bottom of the clear pot touches that water, the lower roots remain in a much wetter environment than the upper roots. Pour out every bit of runoff. Check whether the base of the clear pot is actually elevated or whether it sits flat against the bottom. A decorative pot can look beautiful and still create poor drainage if no one empties it. Also, look at the leaves, but read them carefully. Firm leaves generally suggest the plant is maintaining hydration. Slightly soft leaves can occur for more than one reason. A dry plant may have soft leaves, but so can a plant with failing roots that can no longer absorb water. The answer is not to water the leaves. The answer is to connect the leaf condition with the root condition, the pot weight, and the moisture in the center. Condensation inside a clear pot can offer another clue, but interpret it carefully. A few droplets do not tell you exactly how wet every part of the medium is. They do tell you that moisture is still moving through the pot. If the pot walls are heavily fogged, the moss feels cool, and the pot is still heavy, this is not the moment to add a vacation watering, simply because the top looks dry. Use your nose as well. Healthy, moist bark has an earthy smell, but old medium that stays wet too long can smell sour or stale. A bad smell does not mean you should immediately tear the plant apart 5 minutes before leaving. It means the root zone deserves closer inspection, and the trip may require a trusted person to monitor the plant or a change of plans before departure. Clear pots are useful, but not every root is visible. That is why combining several clues is safer than looking for one perfect signal. Think of it as a short conversation with the plant. The root color gives you one answer. The weight gives you another. The center of the medium, the leaf condition, and the presence or absence of standing water complete the picture. Now compare two common situations. In the first, the visible roots are silver. The bark pieces deep in the pot are pale. The wooden skewer comes out nearly dry, and the pot feels light. That orchid is giving you several reasons to water. In the second, a few outer roots are silver, but the center moss is cool. The pot is heavy, and there are droplets along the wall. That orchid is giving you several reasons to wait. Waiting does not mean neglecting the plant. It means respecting the moisture that is already there. For a plant in dense moss, the safest vacation preparation may be doing nothing to the root zone beyond emptying the cachepot and moving the plant away from excessive heat. Also check for a tight inner nursery plug. Some orchids are repotted into bark, while a compact plug remains around the center roots. The outer bark may dry quickly, while that inner material stays damp. You do not need to dismantle a healthy, blooming plant at the last minute just to search for a plug, but if you already know one is present, include it in your watering decision. The final inspection in this step is for active trouble. Look under the leaves, around the crown, along the flower spike, and near the base for mealybugs, scale, or other pests. A small pest problem can grow while the plants are grouped together and no one is watching. Isolate a suspicious plant rather than placing it in the middle of the collection. Use only a treatment you understand, and allow time to observe the plant before leaving. Here is the key point to remember before you move on. Silver roots are useful, but they are not the final vote. The center of the pot gets the final vote. Once the orchid has passed all those checks and is genuinely close to dry, tip number 2 is to water thoroughly and let it drain completely. Take the clear pot out of the decorative container before you begin. Use clean water at a comfortable temperature, not ice-cold water and not hot water. Apply the water evenly through the medium so the roots and bark or moss are moistened without leaving one side dry and the other side soaked. You do not need to double the amount because your trip is longer. An orchid does not store an extra week of water simply because you soak it for an extra hour. Watering thoroughly means wetting the medium appropriately, then restoring air around the roots as excess water leaves. It does not mean creating a reservoir under the pot. Pay attention to how quickly the water passes through. If it rushes down one dry channel and leaves most of the bark untouched, rotate the pot and water again gently, so the medium is moistened more evenly. If water barely moves through dense, old material, do not respond by filling the cachepot and leaving the plant to soak. Slow drainage is information. It may mean the medium is compacted or decomposed and will need attention when you have enough time to repot and monitor the plant. Keep the flower spikes supported while moving the pot. A tall blooming Phalaenopsis can become top-heavy when wet, and a loose inner pot may tip inside a decorative container. Confirm that the plant is stable, the stake is secure without pinching the spike, and the leaves are not pressed against a wall or hot pane of glass. If your tap water normally works well for the orchid, the day before vacation is not the time to switch to an unfamiliar mixture. Use the same suitable water and method the plant has already tolerated. Consistency removes one more variable when you will not be present to watch the response. After watering, let the pot stand where it can drain freely. Do not place it immediately back into the cache pot. Give the drainage holes time to stop dripping. Tilt the pot slightly if water is trapped against the base, but do not shake the roots or disturb the plant. Now check the crown, the central area where the leaves meet. If water has collected there, tip the plant gently and wick the water away with the corner of a clean paper towel. Water sitting in the crown is especially risky when the room is cool, airflow is limited, and no one will be home to notice a developing problem. The same applies to water trapped in deep leaf joints. Once the pot has stopped dripping, empty the decorative container again. Dry the bottom if necessary. Then place the orchid back only when the clear pot is no longer sitting in runoff. The next mistake happens after many people believe the watering is finished. They add fertilizer because they want the plant to have extra food while they are gone. Do not increase the concentration before a trip. Strong fertilizer does not create a safety reserve. It can increase salt around the roots, especially if the medium dries unevenly while no one is there to flush it. If fertilizing is already part of your normal routine and the plant is healthy, stay with a mild, familiar schedule rather than inventing a stronger one. If the roots are damaged, the plant is severely dry, or the medium is staying wet too long, stability is more important than feeding. Clean water and correct drainage are safer than a last-minute fertilizer experiment. Avoid long soaking sessions meant to store water. Some growers soak certain orchids as part of a routine, but leaving the pot submerged for a long period right before departure is not a universal vacation solution. The longer the root zone stays saturated, the less air remains around the roots. Phalaenopsis roots need moisture, but they also need oxygen. Before we move to the window, look at the pot one final time. Is it moist or is it waterlogged? Is it draining or is it sitting in runoff? Those are not the same conditions. Tip number 3 is to stabilize the orchid's environment. Watering is only part of vacation care. A plant can be perfectly watered and still suffer if it is left against hot glass, in harsh afternoon sun, or directly in the path of an air conditioning vent. Check the window at the hottest part of the day, not only in the morning when the light feels gentle. A western or southern exposure can become much stronger later. Glass can intensify heat around leaves that sit too close. If a leaf touches hot glass, move the pot back. If direct sun falls on the leaves for a long period, use a sheer curtain or shift the orchid far enough to receive bright, indirect light instead. Do not move the plant from a bright window to a dark interior room simply because you are leaving. The goal is not to remove light. The goal is to remove damaging heat and intense direct sun while keeping the light level reasonably consistent. A sudden move into deep shade may not kill the plant during a short trip, but it is unnecessary stress and can make the return to brighter conditions more abrupt. Now find the nearest air vent. If cool, dry air blows directly across the flowers, buds, or leaves, move the orchid out of that direct stream. Air conditioning can keep the home from overheating, which is useful, but a concentrated draft can create a very different microclimate around one plant. Buds and open flowers are often more sensitive to sudden changes than mature leaves. Do not turn off cooling in a hot home if indoor temperatures may rise sharply while you are gone. You do not need a perfect number that applies to every orchid. You need to avoid extremes. A stable, comfortable indoor environment is generally safer than a room that becomes very hot by day and cools dramatically later. Some growers group plants closer together before traveling. This can slightly moderate the immediate environment around them, but do not pack them so tightly that leaves overlap heavily and airflow disappears. Recently watered pots need ventilation. Crowding also makes it easier for pests or disease to spread unnoticed. Notice what the sun does to the decorative pot as well. A dark outer pot can heat faster near a bright window, warming the root zone even when the leaves are not visibly burning. Touch the side of the container during the hottest period. If it feels unusually hot, increase the distance from the glass or filter the light. If you use a small fan for circulation, keep the airflow gentle and indirect. The goal is to prevent stagnant air, not to dry one side of the plant rapidly. A fan connected to a timer or smart outlet should be tested before the trip so you know it starts reliably and does not blow the curtain into the flowers. Leave space around the crown and leaf surfaces. Do not place wet towels, laundry, or other objects beside the orchid in an attempt to raise humidity. They can block air, change the local temperature, or keep surfaces damp. A clean, uncluttered area is easier for a sitter to inspect and less likely to hide spilled water. If your orchid is in bloom, avoid moving it repeatedly from room to room while you search for the perfect vacation location. Make one sensible adjustment, then leave it stable. Orchids often tolerate a familiar, imperfect spot better than a series of dramatic last-minute changes. The same principle applies to humidity. Do not place the pot directly in standing water to raise humidity. If you use a humidity tray, the pot must remain above the waterline. The water can evaporate below, but the roots should not be soaking in it. A safer location can protect the orchid, but a brand new care system can create a problem you will not discover until you return. Tip number 4 is to avoid untested solutions and stressful changes right before departure. The night before, a trip is not the ideal time to redesign your entire orchid setup. A self-watering wick can work in some systems, but it must be tested with the exact pot, medium, wick material, and water level you plan to use. A wick that moves water slowly in bark may move it much faster in compact moss. The height of the reservoir matters. The thickness of the wick matters. The temperature and dryness of the room matter. Test the setup while you are still home. Watch how wet the center becomes over several normal days. Check whether the lower roots stay constantly saturated. If you have not tested it, do not trust it for the first time while you are away. The same warning applies to leaving an orchid in a bathtub or sink with standing water. Advice designed for common houseplants does not always translate well to orchids. Phalaenopsis roots need drainage and air. A shallow pool around the base may keep some houseplants hydrated, but it can leave orchid roots too wet for too long. Do not cover the orchid with a plastic bag to trap humidity unless you are using a carefully managed recovery method and understand the need for airflow. A sealed or nearly sealed environment can collect condensation on leaves and in the crown. That is not a good experiment to begin when no one will be checking the plant. Avoid repotting a stable orchid the day before you leave. Repotting changes how the pot holds water, disturbs roots, and can make the plant less stable at the exact moment you will stop observing it. If the medium is badly decomposed, the pot has no drainage, or there is serious rot, intervention may be necessary. But handle urgent problems early enough to monitor the plant afterward, whenever possible. Do not cut roots merely because they look untidy. Aerial roots outside the pot can be healthy. Firm stained roots can still function. Remove only tissue that is clearly dead or rotten during an appropriate repotting process. Last-minute over-trimming reduces the plant's ability to absorb water and creates fresh wounds before a period without observation. Do not introduce a new fertilizer, pesticide, oil spray, or homemade mixture right before you travel. Even a useful product can cause a reaction if it is mixed too strongly, applied in heat, or allowed to sit on leaves. Treat active pest problems with enough time to assess the result and isolate affected plants so a problem does not spread through the collection while you are gone. For a longer trip, the safest upgrade may not be a device. It may be one person with 3 very clear instructions. Tip number 5 is to make plant sitter care simple enough to follow without turning your helper into an orchid expert. The most common mistake is leaving a long note that says too much but does not make the decision clear. Start by deciding which pots actually need to be checked. A large Phalaenopsis in dense moss may not need the same attention as a mini orchid in a tiny bark pot. Mark only the plants that are likely to approach dryness during the trip. Use simple labels. You might mark one pot, check this pot, another, moss, dries slowly, and another, mini orchid, dries faster. The label is not a command to water. It is a reminder to inspect. Then give one decision rule. Ask the sitter to lift the marked pot and check the center of the medium if possible. If the pot still feels heavy or the center is damp, leave it alone. If it feels light, the visible roots are mostly silver, and the center is nearly dry, then it may be ready for water. Prepare the watering location in advance. Show where the clear pot should be removed from the decorative container. Show where it can drain. Make it obvious that the runoff must be discarded before the plant goes back. Make the written note easy to scan. Put the 3 steps at the top, then list only the marked pots below. Keep pruning scissors, fertilizer, and sprays away from the watering area so the sitter is not tempted to solve a problem that has not been diagnosed. If several people may enter the home, choose one person who is responsible for the orchids, so 2 helpers do not water the same pot. A quick demonstration is more valuable than a long explanation. Let the sitter lift a wet pot and a drier pot while you are there. Show them the difference between water draining through the clear pot and water left behind in the outer container. Ask them to repeat the steps once. This small rehearsal can prevent the most common misunderstanding. The entire instruction can be this simple. Check only the marked pots. Wu Daozen. Water only if the pot feels light and the center is nearly dry. Let the pot drain completely and empty the decorative container. That is enough. Your sitter does not need to mist every morning. They do not need to count ice cubes. They do not need to fertilize. They do not need to move the plant to a different window. They only need to make one careful decision and complete the drainage step. Avoid instructions such as water on Wednesday without adding a condition. Wednesday may arrive while the moss is still damp. A calendar cannot see inside the pot. If the sitter is unsure, give them permission not to water. For many orchids, delaying an uncertain watering is safer than adding water to a medium that is already wet. Ask them to send a photo of the roots, the pot, and the center of the medium before acting. Also tell them what not to do. Do not pour water directly into the crown. Do not leave water in the cassia pot. Do not water every orchid because one pot was dry. Do not move the plants into full sun after watering. Now we can turn all 5 tips into 3 practical vacation plans. If you are leaving only for the weekend, inspect each orchid before you go. Water only the plants that are genuinely ready. Drain them completely. Empty every cassia pot. Keep the plants in a stable location with bright, indirect light and no strong draft. For a healthy orchid in a normal home, a short absence often does not require a complicated system or a plant sitter. Do not build a 2-week solution for a 2-day absence. For a trip of about 1 week, pay closer attention to pot size and medium. A mini orchid in open bark may dry faster than a larger plant in moss. Reduce harsh, direct sun, but do not place the collection in darkness. Check that the air conditioning vent does not blow directly on the plants. In a very warm, bright, or dry home, or with small, fast-drying pots, arrange for someone to inspect them once. Inspection does not automatically mean watering. A 1-week trip calls for better observation, not automatically more water. For a vacation close to 2 weeks, add a reliable human check. Mark the pots that may need attention. Leave the 3-step instruction. Demonstrate how to remove the clear pot, water, drain, and empty the decorative container. Test any wick or support system before you leave. Keep the routine familiar. Do not water every orchid on the same day, and do not create a larger reservoir around the roots. For a longer vacation, add a reliable check, not more standing water. When you return home, resist the urge to water everything immediately. First, look at the leaves, flowers, and buds. Check the visible roots. Lift the pot. Inspect the center of the medium. Look inside the cassia pot for runoff. Water only the orchids that are truly ready. If a plant looks stressed, do not rush to fertilize it. Restore the normal environment, confirm the root condition, and correct the actual problem. A dry pot and a wet pot can both produce soft leaves for very different reasons. The date on your return ticket cannot tell you whether your orchid is thirsty. The roots, the medium, and the weight of the pot can. Prepare the orchid you actually have, not the emergency you are imagining. Check before you water. Drain before you leave. Keep the environment stable. Avoid untested fixes. And make plant sitter instructions simple. Do that, and you can walk out the door with a much calmer mind and return ready to care for the plant based on what it truly needs.